This is All the Right Marketing, a publishing podcast by Cardinal Rule Press. Now, here's your host, Maria Dismondy.
Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to All the Right Marketing, where we speak with business owners and anyone who is really in the book industry about how are they getting the messages about their books out into the world. Because we all know that publishing a book and writing a book is really, really wonderful. But what's the next step? How do we get readers? How do we get parents and teachers and caregivers to really learn and gain visibility around our titles? Today, our guest is Colter Jackson. She is both author illustrator, which I love when we have an author and illustrator. She has several books that we're going to talk about here today. Her work has appeared in the New York Times, in different magazines. She's going to talk about that as well. She also has an MFA in creative writing from Sarah Lawrence College, and she lives in the city, New York City, with her lovely family. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I love what your husband says about your soul, because we're recording this on the day after Halloween. And one of the things I've been seeing on, friends' Instagrams and on social media are those enormous giant pumpkins that you see at the state fair, the winners that, they're usually on pallets, right? And so share with our listeners what your husband says about your soul.
He says that my soul is the size of one of those prize-winning pumpkins. It's a reference to a movie that we watched once, where it was about the size of different people have different sized souls. And the main character's soul is the size of a chickpea. I was like, I wonder what my soul looks like. And he's like, your soul is the size of one of those prize-winning pumpkins.
I love it. Was that the movie? I think it's a Disney movie called Soul.
No, it's a movie called Cold Souls.
Cold Souls. Okay.
Adult movie. There's a playwright, and his soul is very heavy, and he reads in the New Yorker that you can have your soul removed. And he does, but then he's a terrible playwright.
Oh. Interesting. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about your journey, Colter. Like, where did you go? You did go to college for creative writing, but tell us then, you went to school for creative writing, and what happened next?
Well, I had my undergrad from the University of Missouri, and I originally went to work in advertising. That's how I got to New York City from Missouri, is I came here to work in advertising. And I always loved the idea of New York. I felt like this is where all the books came from, and this is where I wanted to be. I was always drawn to books. And I've been trying to write novels for 20 years. And novel writing is really hard. And if you don't sell your novel, it lives in a drawer and no one ever sees it. And it takes, 5 to 10 years of your life often. So I kind of
right.
and I still do it, I love it, but I wanted something I could finish, and I had always done art. I'd never studied it, but I had just always done it as a hobby. I've always loved it. And I honestly could not believe that my first publisher let me illustrate that book with absolutely no training. I didn't know Photoshop. I had to teach myself everything. There was a huge learning curve.
And that first book was it Frog Heaven or Elephants Make Fine Friends?
My first book was put out by Penguin Random House, and it was Elephants Make Fine Friends.
And we will have the link in the show notes. You have got to see these illustrations. I can't believe you even second guessed them selecting you for the illustrator. That's just, they were wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. So there is something about my art I think people, respond to, even though like my confidence was really low, and just feeling like, how in the world, it's one thing to draw one nice picture, but to do 40 nice pictures that all look like the same characters, it was like really an intimidating thing. And I really loved it. And so then I started making more. So that's just kind of how it's one of those weird things that I completely fell into. But it just happens to be the thing that I have, a little traction with.
And can you share, Colter, is it watercolor that you work with, and then you use the digital program to lay it out?
Yeah, so I do everything in pencil. So I do all the shading. I have basically the bulk of the work is in getting the pencil drawing correct and then doing all the shading in pencil. And then I do a very light watercolor wash over the pencil. That's not at all the correct way to use watercolor, but that's just kind of, again, I taught myself, so that's just sort of I like the look of that. And then I will put it into the computer program to kind of punch up the colors and do some of the correcting.
Wonderful. And I mean, just beautiful. I would say, I don't want to use the word whimsical, but I get like this really gentle feeling when I view your artwork. So I don't know, what other people have said, but we'll definitely put a link there because it's beautiful.
Thank
So
you.
you illustrated and wrote your first book and it came out, and luckily you have advertising background, because I'm sure that that came into play in helping you to market your book. So let's talk a little bit about that first book, that second book. The book is in your hand. Did you know what your publisher was going to do? Was it kind of black and white, like we're going to do X, Y, and Z to market your book? Or tell us a little bit about that process.
So as is often the case, or is the case for a lot of people, by the time my book was acquired and by the time it was supposed to come out, the acquiring editor had left. So it was orphaned. Which was, it's hard whenever because the original editor is the one who loves it. They're the ones who want it. So first book really, that marketing was up to me. And they did all the distribution, which is, I feel like more and more kind of that's what your publisher does. They sell it in, they do distribution, but they very often, I think, are relying on you to do the marketing push. So, that's kind of how that unfolded. So, no real, like they had me fill out papers that were like, here's, if you were to write a byline, what would it be about? And then they immediately put it back on you, where they're like, okay, go write that byline. It wasn't like I just don't think there's enough resources for every single book, for every single author, to get a lot of like handheld, they don't have the time. And even when you have a PR team, I feel like they still have 50 books, 100 books,
Yeah.
All these books that they're worried about. So you are going to be the best advocate for your book.
Yeah, that's a good way of explaining. And I think there's also a difference between small houses and big houses. So you might see a little more handholding with a small house versus a big house, but then there's, give and take on both of those. So you also wrote and illustrated Frog Heaven, is that correct?
Yes, Frog Heaven is not in print. It is an online.
It's an online. Okay.
So you can find that. That's on the Rumpus.
Okay.
And then the second print book that I have is The Rhino Suit. And then I also am about to sign a contract for my third book, all with different publishers.
Wonderful. Oh, that's cool, because you're getting these different experiences on, what the process looks like. Although once you kind of get used to something, then the process changes. And so what would you say you've learned were some of your best marketing tactics? You've had several different publishers, you're getting visibility. What are the best ways that you've gained that visibility, would you say?
Well, I think that my publisher of The Rhino Suit Sounds True, their strategy relied heavily on Bookstagram. The Bookstagram, which is this incredible network of teachers and librarians and book lovers on Instagram. Pardon me if I'm telling you something that you're deeply familiar with.
No, we've used them before, and I'm just shocked at the engagement that they have. It's really wonderful.
Amazing. And so I really started to see that is a strategy that really paid off. and started to think about more of a holistic, like career long, like how to leverage the work that they had put behind this book for my next book and my next book, just in case like a smaller publisher doesn't have the resources in the future, or if I ever wanted to put out my own book, if I can't sell it to a publisher, but I feel really strongly that it's a book that needs to be out there, like how can I leverage the connections that they are making for me. So that's kind of what lately what I've been trying to strategize is like how to use the inroads of the Bookstagram for future purposes, not just this one book, which I mean it has greatly improved sales, and it's now like at a steady, and I still have Bookstagram members like trickling in that want to like feature the book. And then I, of course, I am a big fan of Instagram. It's just my generation's like sweet spot.
Mhm.
But I also, there were influencers that I, really enjoy and follow, and I reached out to them personally. And some of them weren't even affiliated with the book world. Some of them were sort of like kids fashion or design, like decorating, to ask if they would feature the book. And some of them did. I would say I had like maybe 2 out of 5 of the, or 4 out of 10, like something like that, like a pretty
Okay.
good batting average for, if one of them has 300,000 followers. Like that, those are ultimately like some big impressions that you could make. So like a lot of bang for the buck. So it was worth, trying to introduce them to the book, tell them about the book, send the book to their kids, like whatever I could do to like um, to get featured on those feeds and on those grids.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, a lot of social media can be grassroots style marketing where you're connecting with the individuals. Maybe you're sharing a digital copy of, a watermark copy of the book. But when you're starting to put your own money into it is when you're sending the book, you're covering the cost of the book, you're shipping the book. What do you think about that? Do you think that it's important for authors to put some of their own money into the marketing of their books?
Certainly your own time and energy. I think be ready to do that.
Yeah.
I think invest what you can and think of it as a long-term investment in your career, even if it's not, an immediate payoff for the current book that you're promoting. I think you can think of it as like long-term, like, it's a drag that Instagram requires you to pay for those impressions now. But I would also like start looking into TikTok. That's kind of the Wild West where, I've seen friends get like millions of views, just sort of on accident, like just making something funny or making something really
Yeah.
informative.
I mean, look at Colleen Hoover. Colleen Hoover's book. It ends with us, and now it starts with us. I mean, I was following because I do enjoy her writing. I was following her book came out about a week ago, and it sold 808,000 copies in week 1. I mean, and
Incredible.
it was a follower, someone or an influencer shared something on TikTok, and it just kind of went viral. So I love that advice. I do. And I think you also have to be comfortable on TikTok because not all personalities are going to connect over there on TikTok. So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I think a year ago, whenever we were starting to talk about the marketing for the Rhino suit, it was like, I don't know if your target, we're targeting moms. I don't know if they're on TikTok, but I think they are. I think and if they're not, they're getting there. Like they're
Yeah,
coming.
I mean, I've had friends who send me recipes and it has the little TikTok logo in it. And so they screenshot a recipe and share it with each other. So I do think moms are over there now. But you're right, like maybe not a year ago, but now, yes. Well, you have had a lot of fun in your writing business and journey, and it sounds like you're getting close to having even more fun with, signing a contract and moving forward with that. So, what advice would you have for aspiring writers here listening to the podcast?
is this marketing advice or is this just
Yeah, let's go marketing.
okay.
So I'm a writer, and I've been writing manuscripts, and I haven't been published yet. So what advice would you give to me?
Well, I would say you're going to hear no a lot and just keep going. You get better and better at hearing the no's, and every no is closer to a yes. And in terms of marketing, as I said before, like I think that when my first book came out, I was like, this book has to be a blockbuster. This has to be the one. And seeing it more as a career move, and seeing your work as a whole over the span of all the years that you'll be working, I think is a more effective and less panicky way of dealing with your own marketing, because every book that comes out, like you get new impressions, new people that love that book. Then your next book comes out and you carry with you the people who really loved that first book. So I think my advice would just be to try to see your marketing and your career as a longer timeline, rather than like, I have to make this one book, this is my one chance. I think that that's not necessarily the most helpful way to view that.
That's wonderful advice. And, I don't think there's anything wrong with someone getting on Instagram or starting a blog or starting a website before you're published, and thinking of it as that timeline. So it's, part of it is I'm creating a digital footprint and then I get published. So I think it's okay to start that.
Absolutely. And I think that setting small goals for yourself, like, I hadn't even broken 1,000 followers yet on my Instagram account, but I knew before the Rhino suit came out that I really wanted, like, there might be something about the algorithm that like gives you more impressions once you get more followers, that it will show it to more people. So like I was trying to hit these like smaller sort of number of followers goals for myself before the book came out. So I was investing a lot of time in like I'm using stories, or like, here's meet all the dogs from the Rhino suit, because I'm a dog lover. Here's the dogs I used in the Rhino suit. Here they are in real life. Just trying to find interesting content that isn't just pushing the book.
I love that too. I mean, because it doesn't come off as salesy. It's really being able to feature yourself as the artist and the creator, instead of saying book, book, book. It's like, look at my process. This is what I did. And I did see a picture of a little dog in a witch's hat. Was this your animal?
Oh yes, this is that is my little love, Peggy Sue Picklebottom, my dog. Love to draw her.
That's awesome.
I think there's in that picture, if you swipe, there's also a picture of her in real life in a witch hat. So
see, I'm connected to dogs, so I do love that. Well, Colter, this has been wonderful. I appreciate your time and sharing with our listeners. Those of you listening, you know that we have podcasts that go live every Tuesday, and we look forward to sharing this with you. And until then, please think outside of the box and don't be afraid to reach your audience in new and creative ways. Thank you. If this episode resonated with you, let's take it a step further. Head over to cardinalrulepress.com and check out our blog. It is filled with resources for anyone who loves books, whether you are a publisher, a librarian, a bookseller, or an author. We help you to figure out ways to get visibility around those books. Thanks for listening to All the Right Marketing with Maria Dismondy. If there is a topic you would like us to explore and cover, please email podcast@cardinalrulepress.com. Head over to our website, cardinalrulepress.com, to sign up for our monthly newsletter where you can learn more tips on getting books visible into the market. Last but not least, follow us on Instagram for a daily dose of all things books. If you enjoyed this episode, rate and review or share with a friend or colleague. Thanks so much.